Hi, everyone, and good morning. My name is Aaron Fucello. I'm the Associate Director at ISSS. I'm here with my colleague, Chiwei. Chiwei, did you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. This is Chiwei.
I see a lot of familiar names in the attendee list, which is great. This is a new workshop that we worked on. The point of the workshop is to give you guys some information on work authorized statuses that are kind of outside of the normal J1, H1B area. So the vast majority of our international trainees, postdocs, employees, faculty and staff are on H1B or are on a J1 exchange visitor. So you're probably pretty familiar with those types of status, but there are many other different work statuses that people come to Penn to work on. So we wanted to give you guys kind of a big picture overview. There's some more detailed points as well, but just kind of get you more familiar with these statuses so that when you see them, you'll know what you're looking at basically. And there are some great options that we'll get into for people from specific countries, really kind of carve outs in the immigration law for example, Canadians, citizens of Mexico, Australians. And we'll also talk about permanent residency. We don't have a permanent residency workshop, but it's pretty common procedure that we go through. And I know that a lot of you work on, so we'll speak a little bit about that as well to give you guys some more background. Chiwei, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we get started?
No, yeah, I just cannot wait to share.
Yeah, I also wanted to say that we kind of designed this workshop to give more opportunity for feedback and questions. So, we'll have pauses throughout this hour. And if you have specific questions, you can either type them into the chat or you can raise your hand and we can talk about it. But I feel like when we do this in a more interactive fashion, it's hopefully more helpful for you guys, and it's definitely more interesting for us as presenters. So that's kind of the idea here. So please don't be shy. And if you have questions along the way, feel free to raise them and we'll try to address them as best we can.
Yeah, we hope to make this workshop more interactive. Just ask questions, and then we will also share our experience with you.
So without further ado, we have some slides that we've presented. Jackie, will you be sharing or should I be sharing the screen?
You can go ahead and share your screen, Aaron.
Okay.
Jackie, I just see chat is disabled. So should we make it enabled or?
Usually we just use the Q&A for the submitted questions. So if anyone needs to submit a question during the discussion or during the event, they can feel free to use that Q&A box right there.
All right.
All right. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. Sorry, I'm off to a cracking start here. Yay, okay, we're started. So as I said, immigration alternatives at Penn. I don't know if you'd say alternatives. I guess they're just alternatives to our normal J and H statuses, which I said the vast majority of our foreign national employees who are here are on J and H. However, you will, as department contacts working on immigration matters, you're going to run into these other types of status. It won't be as common as J and H, but there'll definitely be something that you'll see. And there are really great benefits to some of these statuses for the department. Mainly, it's lower processing costs and lower processing times. Some of them don't involve any processing on Penn's part, but we'll get into it. Chiwei, did you want to start?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Aaron. So today we are going to talk about at least like six different categories of these different immigration status. Okay, so the first one will be OPT, That's very, very common, especially if a student or an employee graduated from a US-based university, they are qualified for OPT and STEM OPT. And the second one will be visitors, B1, B2. Are they allowed to work here or are they allowed to receive salary? This is the second one. And the third one will be E3. This is especially for Australian citizens. And also next, we will talk about TN, that's for Mexican and Canadian citizens. And the O1 is especially for like extraordinary employees. Okay, and then the last thing we want to talk about permanent residency. So I'm going to start with OPT and visitors, B1, B2, and Aaron will cover the rest. So Aaron, can you? Next slide. Okay, thank you, Aaron. So the first on status that we want to introduce is OPT and STEM OPT. I sometimes receive emails from departments asking me that, well, we have a student graduated from Drexel University or from Princeton University, and they are here working for our department with OPT. Or someone has already started interview, and then among all those applicants, they have OPT sponsored by the other university. Okay, so OPT, the full name of OPT is optional practical training. It's basically a privilege for an international student who receive F1 visa in the United States. Okay, so for initial optional practical training are 12 months. Okay, that's the basic OPT. But if students, they are in science or technology or this special major, they may be qualified for STEM OPT extension. That's another 24 months after this 12 months of OPT. So that if this person is qualified for STEM OPT, then Penn will need to help them complete this I-983 training plan. Penn department and the PI will need to help them complete this training plan. But basically, we are not their sponsor for OPT or STEM OPT. So the student need to figure out the OPT and STEM OPT with their sponsor score. That means that those schools they graduated from. Okay, but what Penn need to do, especially during STEM OPT, we need to complete this training plan with them. We need to establish employer-employee relationship with this employee, and we also need to do attestation, and also the student need to complete this reporting application, and then every 12 months. We need to help them with the reporting as well. And we also want to make sure that this is a paid position, and then this person is offered appropriate wage. Okay, so let's talk about OPT. Okay, initial OPT, just like what I have mentioned, it's 12 months, and OPT is a privilege or benefit for F1 student in the United States if they have completed at least 12 months of full-time enrollment in an American institution, okay? And then OPT record were actually managed by the host school. So OPT, the student is responsible to apply for OPT, and then the school they graduated from will help them, recommend them with this OPT application. Okay, so for example, if this student graduated from Princeton or from Drexel, then Princeton or Drexel, they will need to work together on this OPT application with the student. And the students submit everything to the USCIS. Once they get an EAD card, OPT EAD card, they will come to Penn and say, hey, I'm eligible to work. This is my work authorization. So Penn can hire the student using their EAD card. Remember, when you see the EAD card the students submit, you want to make sure there's a start and end day, just like what you can see on the lab. There's a picture of this EAD card. So this is a start and end day. You just want to make sure that the student cannot start working before the start day, and they cannot work beyond the end day. So we just want to, the department need to be very careful and then to monitor the start and end day on the EAD card. Any change in the employment should be handled by the student and the school. So if there's a salary change, or if the student want to change to another employer, then the student need to report to their school. We do not help them handle this because we are not their sponsor. Their school is the sponsor.
Yeah, if your department's interested in hiring a recent graduate of another school, so say for example, you reach out, we're interested in hiring someone who's graduating in May from Harvard or Princeton or the University of Vermont, and they're a foreign national. We don't need to start off by sponsoring them. And that's one of the great things about OPT is that this is a benefit for the student. It's not its own immigration status. It's F1 student status. It's just an extension of their F1 student status. But once they apply for this card, there's a picture sample here, and they receive the card and the start date becomes current, they can just use this to be onboarded and complete their I-9. So it's really a huge benefit for the department. We don't really have to do anything. They show up with the card and they can be onboarded, and it's great. It's great for the student. It's great for the hiring department. So if you're hiring someone who's going to be graduating soon, I would ask them, are you eligible for OPT? Have you applied for OPT? If they graduated a couple months ago, can you send me a picture of your EAD card? Once you get the card, feel free to reach out to my office to verify. But if they have this card and the start date's current, pretty straightforward. They can come to Penn and they can begin working as long as the job is directly related to their major field of study, which usually isn't a problem at Penn. Most hiring departments will only hire someone with a directly related degree. So I think OPT is a great benefit. The main takeaways are that it's not Penn sponsored unless it's a Penn student. The hiring department doesn't need to pay for this type of status. It's a self-sponsored basically status. It's kind of flexible, which is great. And again, if they're in a STEM field, you can get up to 3 years of work authorization without Penn having to sponsor, without Penn having to pay for immigration benefit requests. So it's really beneficial. A lot of people will say, well, this person's graduating in May. Can we get them on an H-1B? Or should they leave and come back on a J-1? The answer is no. If they're eligible for OPT, they should really use OPT for all the reasons we just discussed. Postdocs, as you know, should be on a J1 unless you get an exception to the J1. One of the reasons you can get an exception is if the individual is here on OPT. They're in F1 status on OPT. Then you can request an exception to that J1 rule. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Keep in mind OPT if it's a recent graduate. It's a really, I think, attractive benefit.
And they can only extend their stay in the United States. Like sometimes when I receive some H-1B petition request, I see that, well, this person actually has a lot of time left on his OPT or STEM OPT. So at this time, your department may want to consider just to wait, the Aaron say, just to wait until toward the end of the OPT time, that if you still want to keep this employee, that you can think about H-1B option.
Yeah, very common transition, OPT or STEM OPT to H-1B to continue work authorization. But some people will say, look, I have OPT until I don't know, December. Can we just change my status now to H-1B? I mean, likely yes, but why? There has to be another reason why. It's a good benefit for the student, a good benefit for the department. So always check for OPT if it's a recent graduate.
Yeah. So the next we are going to talk about STEM OPT. Then STEM OPT is very similar to OPT, but the application process for the student part is a little complicated, more complicated than OPT. The STEM OPT for student, they will be granted for 24 additional months after the expiration date of their OPT. And then from the department or from Penn's perspective, that the department or the PI just need to complete a training plan with the student. Okay, so anyone that with direct knowledge of this employment may sign and then may complete and try to write up this training plan for the employee. And then once we complete, then the employee will need to submit this form to the school. And everything other than that will be the school and the student. They will need to submit the application to the USCIS. And then once it's approved, well, while they are waiting for the STEM OPT to be approved, they can still continue to work for Penn for up to 18 months.
Yeah, that's a great point, Xue, and something to remember. If someone timely files for a STEM OPT extension, so they file for the extension, they're in a STEM field, they file the request for an extended EAD card before their old EAD card expires. So for STEM OPT, you get a completely new card. You don't get a 3-year card. You get a 1-year initial OPT, then a 2-year STEM OPT. If you file before your initial OPT expires and the card expires, but you haven't received your new STEM card, you can continue working, even with the expired card, for an additional 18 months. So you don't have to get the new card to continue working. You can simply continue working as long as you filed the extension timely. You get a receipt notice that says you filed on time, and you can use that to be re-I-9 verified. I know Devin's here. I don't know if Devin wants to speak a little bit towards the end from on board at Penn, but we can think about that. Yeah. And the other question we often get is, someone's here on OPT and they have all these questions. Can you answer them for this person? It's important to remember that OPT is still F1 status, so it's still maintained by their sponsor. If they're a Penn student, of course, we can help. If they're a student from, like I said, a recently graduated student from the University of Vermont, then they need to speak to the University of Vermont about this stuff. It's not a big deal if you send them our way. We just check to see where they're sponsored by and direct them back to their sponsoring school. But it's something to remember if you could.
I see Devin work as a question about the differences between CPT and OPT. So the major difference for CPT, student can only do it before their graduation. So if you want to hire an employee and then they have already graduated, the only option for them to work for Penn is OPT and STEM OPT.
Yeah, I think that's, there's pre-completion OPT, but in reality, in practice, it's just not used very much. It's due to processing times. It takes too long to get the card. So most of the time you'll see CPT for like summer employment when the person is still enrolled at school. It's usually summer employment. I think, the vast majority of the time it's going to be for that. And it's used during the person's course of study, whereas OPT, most commonly you'll see it used after the person graduates, and they'll start working after they graduate.
And for CPT, if you receive a student, they tell you that, well, I'm still a student with Temple University and can I work for you during the summer? You want to ask them to, when they try to do the onboarding, you want to make sure that they are CPT I-20 that says Penn on their I-20. But then, as the employer, we just want to make sure that they have valid status to work for Penn. Yeah, and then for during the school is in session, they're only allowed to work part-time. But during the summer, just like Aaron has mentioned, they are allowed to work full-time, 20 hours per week. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about B1, B2, or if they come in as SDOT, there will be WB, WT. So B1 or WB is basically for pleasure or for business. Sorry, B1 is for business, and then B2 is for pleasure. These apply for foreign nationals. Foreign nationals, they apply for this visa without Penn sponsorship. They basically just come in for their own pleasure, or they come in for short-term, for a short-term business purpose. Okay, so they have same restriction on ESTA and on B1, B2. Okay, so the purpose, just want to remember that this is not a work visa. This is not like OPT or like STEM OPT or H1B or other sort of visa that they actually geared toward work or employment. This is just for them to come in to consult with some business activities, or to attend convention or seminars or workshops or conferences. So for people come in with B1, B2, they cannot receive a salary. That means that they cannot receive an annual wage or monthly wage from a U.S. source of service for their services rendered in the United States. But it means that Penn cannot give them salary. Okay, but they may be able to receive honorarium from Penn if they stay at Penn no longer than 9 days, and then they haven't received honorary from more than 5 other institutions or organizations over the last 6 months. So if you have some scholars come in to give a talk, okay, in a Penn conference, then you are willing to pay them, you are thinking to pay them, just want to make sure that this is not ongoing salary. Okay, this is just a one-time honorarium from Penn. And you also want to make sure that their stay at Penn is no longer than 9 days, and this person has not received other honorarium from from more than 5 institutions or organizations for the last 6 months. Aaron, do you want to add anything for this one?
So this is a tourist visa, a B1 or a B2. The equivalent, there's something, ESTA is a B1 or B2 for citizens of certain countries. It's usually countries from Western Europe. It's usually countries that have great political relationships with the United States. We don't require people to go apply for a visa. They can go online and apply for something called ESTA. It's an electronic travel authorization. Essentially, you enter your information on ESTA, you pay a small fee, and you get the equivalent of a tourist visa. It's a great benefit for people from, like I said, mostly Western Europe. I think maybe Chile or something like that, but mostly it's Western Europe. The key is there's no work allowed on these. You cannot come on an ESTA or a B1, B2 and work. I think often there's a lot of people from these countries will just think, well, I'll just come in on an ESTA. I have an ESTA. I don't have to go apply for a visa. Penn doesn't have to pay for anything. I'll just come on the ESTA and I'll do some work and I'll leave. It's not allowed. I've had two cases this morning with this. Can I just come on an ESTA? I don't need a J1. I could just come on an ESTA. No, you can't, unless there's a specific carve out. So there's this honorarium carve out, which is great. A lot of departments use this for, like Chiwei gave the classic example, coming to Penn to give a talk. We pay for a small honorarium and we pay for incidentals like housing, a hotel for a couple of days and meals. Very, very common, and it's fantastic. Most of the time, these are issued for 10 years and multiple entry for a B1, B2. It depends on the country, but often it's 10 years, which means you could get this 8 years ago. You don't have to do any, you don't have to apply for a new one. It's still valid. You can come in and give your talk, receive an honorarium. You don't need a J1. You don't need any other kind of work authorization if you're just coming for a talk, getting paid an honorarium and incidentals, and then leaving. So B1, B2, or an ESTA is great for that. If that's what you're looking to do. That's really all I have for it. It's just to remember, it's not a work visa. You cannot get paid with this type of visa. There's another carve out for medical doctors who are strictly coming to observe or consult with their colleagues. You can use a B1 or an ESTA for that, but it can't be like someone who's coming for a 2-week training program and who's going to be, any kind of patient contact. No, you cannot use a visitor visa for that. That's another thing I run into all the time. Is doctors saying, well, I did that, 15 years ago. And it's like, well, that was wrong then, and it's wrong now. So we can't do it anymore. That's, we'd have to think about alternatives in that case. It's really used if you're coming in for a business meeting or a conference, and it can even be used if you're going to give a talk and receive an honorarium for that experience. But it can be useful. It just needs to be used in the appropriate way. And the key with immigration law is what activities is the person going to be performing when they're in the U.S. That dictates what type of status they should be in. So that's what you need to think about, and that's what I think about all day long. Is like, well, what is the person doing here? Often when you reach out to me, that's the first thing I'll reach back with is, what exactly will the person be doing here when they're here? Will they be paid? That type of stuff. So that's important. We have questions here. I saw some really good questions in here. I think we already talked about with Devin about the difference between CPT and OPT, mainly that CPT is done during the person's academic program. There's no EAD card with CPT. It's just an endorsed document, an I-20, which says CPT approved essentially from date to date. That's another big difference. Karen asked, do those who had J1, H1B and recently obtained green cards or EAD based on green card applications need to update A9 and visit onboard? Devin, I'll answer this for you. Yes. I hope I'm correct in that, but I'm almost positive they should go and get I-9 verified again with the new document that's the basis of their work authorization. So yeah, if someone gets a EAD card or changes their status, they need to go get I-9 verified. We've tried to add this language to our approval emails and stuff. I know it's, there's a lot of language in there because it's kind of got this legalese, but please remember, if someone changes status or someone has a different basis for work authorization, they should go get verified again so that Penn can confirm that they're authorized to work in the US. It's a different basis for work, so they should be re-verified. Amy. Amy has a couple questions here. Which of these can receive travel reimbursements? B1, B2, WB, WT. So remember, those are kind of the same things. Therefore, WB, WT is ESTA, essentially. It's a B1, B2 for people from specific countries. They can often be reimbursed for travel if they meet the standards that we set out in the previous slide. If they're coming for example, to give a talk, they can receive an honorarium, and that can include travel reimbursements. Devin confirms any change in status requires re-verification. So please remember to encourage them to visit onboard if there's been a change of status or a different basis for their work authorization. Millie said, do we need to request a receipt of STEM OPT to keep them on payroll? Devin, can we have Devin talk for a second about the differences and when they need to be re-onboarded? Jackie, is that possible, or is everyone muted?
Yes, I should be able to let them speak. Just 1 second.
Mr. Yastro.
Yep, there you go.
So Devin is from onboard at Penn. Devin, are you associate director over there, or
assistant manager?
Assistant manager. Great resource and great ally. Devin, do you want to speak a little bit about what, say, for example, someone's on OPT and they apply for a STEM extension, they're getting a new EAD card. What situations do people need to go to your office to be I-9 verified?
Great question. So anytime there is a change in status, the example that you just gave from OPT to STEM OPT, from F1 to OPT, from J1 to H1B, anytime there is a change in status, we need to do a re-verification. That is an in-person process per federal regulation. So if they are on campus, they can make an appointment with onboard at Penn or walk in. We can complete that for them. Or if they are, working outside of campus or somewhere else, we can help them complete a reciprocal part 3 of their I-9. If they simply have an extension date, for example, their J1 gets extended, we do not need to have them do a re-verification. We just need to have a scan of that new document so we can update their passports and visas in Workday. So again, if it's a change in any kind of status, we need to do re-verification, but if it is just a change in date, we can do that virtually.
Excellent. Thank you,
Thank
Devin.
you. Yeah, thank you, Devin.
And again, if anybody ever has any questions about this, because it's a lot of information, I do this every day, so it's second nature to me. You can always just put a ticket into the Solution Center. We'll review it and help you get what you need.
Yeah, Solution Center is a great resource. I think we should all be reaching out to them from time to time. I-9 verification, obviously it's not immigration specific, but it's there's a huge overlap, obviously, with immigration. The whole point of immigration in most cases is to get someone work authorized. And the whole point of I-9 verification is to make sure they're work authorized so we can put them on payroll. So it's a step in the process, really. And it's important to remember that step because it's a huge part of compliance for the university. I think the way I think of it, so when I go and get onboarded, I bring my passport and they verify I'm a US citizen. Okay, you're automatically work authorized to work in the United States. For immigration, if there's any change in the basis for work authorization, they'll need to be re-verified, I-9 verified. They need to make sure that they're eligible to work in the US. And if there's a different basis for that, then they should go do it again. So, it's not a huge burdensome process. It's just a matter of going in with your documents. And again, it's extremely important for compliance at the University of Pennsylvania. So if someone gets a change of status or any other change in the basis for their work authorization, they should be encouraged to go to onboard at Penn and get verified, I-9 verified. As Devin said, they can make an appointment, I believe online, Devin, or just walk in.
Yep. So onboard at Penn's website, there is a link to schedule an appointment with us. But again, we do have walk-in hours from 9:30 to 3:30. They're welcome to walk in. Also, this is a particularly slow time of the year for us. And we have lots of availability, so we're happy to accommodate.
Excellent. Thank you, Devin. Your input's obviously extremely important to this conversation. Joanne asked, she's had professors bring a B1 visa holder in for the summer for shadowing or internship type experience in the lab. Is this allowable? Maybe. I know, I feel like people probably know lawyers often answer every question with maybe. It's not a great answer, but probably yes. If they're just coming to observe, that's what I think of as shadowing. Internship, probably not. If they're doing hands-on work, even if they're not getting paid, we should definitely discuss before the person comes in on a B1. So people will come in on a B1, do this, and then leave, and maybe nothing happens. Okay, but what we're trying to do is be proactive and get them here in the right status so that there isn't an issue. Maybe there won't be, but we need to make sure that they're doing the right thing, and we want to prevent any issue from happening. So if a professor is thinking about bringing someone in for an internship in the summer, we should definitely talk about that before they do it. A visitor visa probably isn't the right visa for that, honestly. I thought I saw a question here before, which was a great question. Joanna's another good question. Is OPT to OPT STEM considered a change in status or just an extension? Technically, it's an extension. There's still an F1 status the whole time. However, the basis for their work authorization is going to change. It's a new EAD card. So they should be I-9 verified, even though it's just an extension. It's kind of an exception to the general rule. I don't think in a regular H-1B extension, for example, you wouldn't need to be I-9 verified. You're still in the same H-1. It's just an extension of H-1 status. Devin, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to give the wrong advice on that.
Nope, that's correct.
Okay. So OPT to STEM OPT is you're in the same status, but it's a different basis for employment, different EAD card. Insurance requirements for a B1 visa holder. There are none because they're not our employee and they're not sponsored by us, is the short answer. If they're in a situation where you're thinking, what insurance should they have? They probably shouldn't be here in a B1. I think that's my gut feeling on that one. They should probably be on like a J if they're doing an internship, or potentially on CPT if they're in the middle of their academic program.
Aaron, there's another question as to how much they can pay for B2, B1, B2 to come in.
Oh, for an honorarium or incidentals, you could
Yeah, I
technically,
think so.
there's
I
no
think this is
limit. There's no limit in the regulations. So yeah, I mean, if you're paying someone $1 million to come on for an honorarium, you know, then there's probably, that's a little strange, but I guess you could do it. I don't know. Yeah, there's no limit in the regulations. I think Amy had asked about if someone's on a J1, do they have OPT or CPT? J1 students are eligible for something called academic training, which is kind of the equivalent of OPT or CPT. It's more similar to CPT in that you don't get an EAD card. You show up with a document that's endorsed and approved for academic training. Seeing as this is our first workshop on this, these are great questions, and I'm going to, you know, add these types of questions to our to these slides for next time. So great questions, guys, and thank you. I think, you know, again, I hope this is more helpful when we can have a discussion than when I'm just reading PowerPoints to you.
Yeah, just to add that for OPT and STEM OPT, the student are on F1 status. Yeah.
Amy said there are restrictions for people on a B2. I don't think you can reimburse them for travel expenses. I mean, I believe that's correct. They'll be here on we'll have a B1, B2 visa. If they enter for a conference, they should say, I'm coming for a conference, and they should be entered by CBP, the people at the airport, in B1 status. They're not just here to go see the Liberty Bell or see the Eagles. Do tourists come see the Eagles? Probably not. They're here to attend a conference, so it's more business as opposed to pleasure, even though conferences can be quite fun, I'm sure. So they should be entered on a B1. And if they come in on a B1, then they're eligible for that honorarium and incidental reimbursement. So I hope that answers that question. Again, if they come here and they say, look, I'm just coming to visit to see the Liberty Bell with my family, and then they come to Penn and go to a conference, then they should not be reimbursed, right? Everything should be above board, and they should be admitted in the correct status so that they can perform the activities that they're coming to do. So they should be honest, and they should not be trying to get around you know, the requirements for immigration. Okay. E3 Australian treaty workers. The next couple of slides we'll talk about are specific to individuals who are nationals of certain countries. These are countries that have good political relationships with the United States, so they have specific carve-outs for immigration options. These are great options because they're cheaper generally, and they have there's almost no processing time, and I'll explain that in a second. So for E3 is kind of the equivalent of H-1B. It's for people in a specialty occupation, people with at least a bachelor's degree in a specific field. Instead of paying $5,000 for an H-1B and going through the whole process of filing and getting an approval notice and sending the approval notice to Australia, the individual can basically just go apply at the consulate with an LCA that Penn processes. It takes about, I would say, 2 weeks for the whole process. We submit the LCA, then we send the certified LCA to them in Australia, and then they go apply at the consulate in Australia. And, you know, they can be admitted for 2 years to work in that status, in E3 status. We don't need to file anything if the person's in Australia. They just go to the consulate with documents and apply for E3 and come in on an E3. And it's a great option for if the person is Australian. We don't get too many Australians, but the ones we do are often here on an E3 just because it's so quick. If they apply in Australia, the consulates in Australia are very familiar with E3, and it's, knock on wood, it's rarely an issue when applying for an E3. It just is a pretty smooth process. You don't need an I-797 approval notice for E3 if you are coming in on an initial E3 from Australia. Again, you just apply at the border, you get a visa stamp in your passport, and you're admitted as an E3 Australian when you get to the border for up to 2 years, and you can work for up to 2 years, and it's extendable indefinitely. We can either file an extension with them still here in the US, or they can go back to Australia and reapply for a new E3 and come back in for an additional 2 years. So it's a really great option for Australians. But again, you have to be an Australian citizen. You can't send someone from China to Australia to apply for this, right? You have to have an Australian passport to get this benefit. The E3 procedure, if you identify someone who's in Australia or someone who's here on an E3, we have an E-form in IPEN. It's called Request Form for E3 Employment. Submit some information to us. I believe the E3 employee will submit some information to us, very similar to H-1B process, the E-forms. And then we prepare either an LCA if the person is in Australia, or we prepare a full petition and file it if the person is in the US already in E3 status. That's an extension or a change of employer option for E3. So if they're in Australia, they simply apply at the consulate. If they're in the US, they can either go back to Australia and reapply for a Penn E3, or we can request a change of employer and an extension with a full petition. So they either travel and apply for the visa, or they just stay in the US and begin working once our E3 is approved. The internal processing fee is a lot cheaper, $640 if we're just doing an LCA and sending it to them, as opposed to $5,000 for an H-1B. So it's definitely cheaper for the department. In kind of a similar vein, it's again country specific, is the TN, which is, it was created by I think NAFTA has a different name. I think the Trump administration changed the name of NAFTA. I don't think they changed any of the substantive portions on immigration, which, like a lot of things he did, I don't understand at all. But it's TN. NAFTA was what it was originally created under. I still refer to it as TN for NAFTA professionals, North American Free Trade something or other. So again, it's for citizens of Canada or Mexico. It is so much easier and so much cheaper than an H-1B, in my opinion. The only sort of catch here is that there's a specific set of occupations which are listed in NAFTA or whatever it's called now, and it has to fall into one of those. There are a number of professions though. So, feel free to reach out if you have a question. You have a Canadian or Mexican national who wants to come work at Penn. TN is likely an option. We just need to make sure that the job they're coming to perform is listed in the regulations. You can simply type in TN NAFTA occupations and you'll get a list of all the occupations there. Or you can just reach out to me and we'll talk about it and make sure the person fits. A huge benefit for Canadians is they don't need a visa. So they can simply apply at the border for TN status. We send them a bunch of documents. Main thing is a letter explaining what they're coming to do. And we include their qualifications to show that they graduated from a university and that they're qualified for the role. And they could basically apply. At the airport, you can apply at something called pre-clearance. Before you even get on the plane, you'll be admitted in TN status. It's just a really nice option for Canadians. Mexican nationals have to apply for a TN visa at the consulate, highly recommended in Mexico. And then they can come in with the TN visa. It's, again, same process. They bring documents to the visa interview, but they have to go through the interview process at the consulate. Initial period of stay, up to 3 years. So similar to an H-1B, they'll be admitted to work. You can work full-time as a NAFTA professional. It's if you're thinking H-1B for a citizen of Canada or Mexico, you should probably look and make sure that a TN is not an option before you go to H-1B. It's just so much cheaper and so much quicker. the package is prepared now based on ISS website and checklist. I'm thinking of changing this to so that ISSS will just process these so they're all consistent and we can make sure that everything's included. But for now, we have on our website, we have guidance, we have a checklist of documents that you can bring. I would highly encourage you to reach out to me directly so that I could take a look at it before you send it. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I think it's, I've had a few cases over the past couple of years where they applied for the TN and it was denied. And that's because something was left out of the letter or the language wasn't exactly right in the letter or the qualifications weren't included, blah, blah, blah. So I could take a look if you'd like. I'm happy to do that. I'm thinking about shifting these to ISSS so we can just prepare them for you. And again, it's a great benefit. Canadians don't even have to apply for a visa. They could just schedule a flight and then apply at the airport. Or if they're coming over the land border, they can apply at the land border for a TN. It's just a great option for Canadians. For Mexicans, they have to apply at the consulate, but still much quicker and usually a lot more straightforward than an H-1B can be. If they're here in TN status, we can file for an extension, or we can file for a change of employer. TNs are employer specific. But if they're from Canada or Mexico, it often makes much more sense to just go to Canada or Mexico for the weekend and re-enter with new TN documents for Penn. If that's not an option, of course, we can extend from within if they're already in the US by filing a full petition. But, just because of geography, it's just sometimes easier to go back to Canada or to Mexico for a couple of days and then re-enter. So, Chiwe, did you have anything else you wanted to add on that?
No.
Okay.
I think you covered it all. Thanks.
I think if there's any takeaway from the past 3 slides, it's if the department is interested in hiring a national of Australia, Canada, or Mexico, think about these options, E3 or TN, just because it's cheaper and it's much easier and more straightforward. And of course, reach out to me or Chiwe or any of our colleagues at ISSS if you have any questions. We can help you determine if they're eligible or what the best strategy would be. So, yeah.
Yeah.
This slide here is 01. You've probably heard of 01. It's for people of extraordinary ability. So at my previous job, we didn't do very many 01s. It always struck me as something like, wow, these people have to be just next level to get an 01. But now at Penn, a lot of our people qualify for this. So you can see on this slide, we have Albert Einstein. Who do we have? Galileo, Marie Curie. We have a lot of people here who are extraordinary. And you don't have to rise to that level, but you have to be pretty accomplished. And I think often when I'm speaking with people about 01, they say, I'd probably qualify for an 01. And it's not about how smart you are. It's about how many accomplishments you have. So it's not really like people call it a genius visa. It's not a genius visa. It's more of a resume visa. How many publications you have, how many citations you have. Have you ever judged the work of others? Have you done peer review? All of these academic accomplishments and achievements are what they look to. So for someone at the very beginning of their career, it's kind of difficult. Even if they're Albert Einstein, it's hard to quantify if someone's very smart. I think that's the issue. You can't submit a petition saying, look, this person is really, really smart, so please approve an 01. You need to say they have 100 citations, they have publications in all these national journals. They were invited to judge the work of others at a conference. They've won this and this award, blah, blah, blah. And you have to back all of that up with evidence that it's actually true. So it's very obviously labor intensive. We outsource these to outside counsel, our Goldblum and Pollins or Clasco, to work on these because they're so labor intensive. We just don't have the capacity to do them. But it's a nice option. It's a super nice option if someone was on a J1 and is subject to the 2-year home residency requirement. Especially if you're in Penn medicine. For physicians, they're automatically subject if they came here for medical training for their residency or their fellowship. They're not allowed to change to H1B. They are allowed to go get an O1 visa at a consulate and come back in. You can get an O1 for up to 3 years. It's a way that people who are subject to the 2-year home residency requirement, how they continue to work at Penn or in the United States. They're still subject to the 2-year home residency requirement, but they're able to get a O1 visa and come back in for 3 years and then figure out next steps as far as 212-year, the 2-year home residency requirement, which I promised myself I wouldn't talk about because it's so confusing, but there you go. Initial period of stay, like I said, is up to 3 years. There's no maximum duration. However, you can only extend in 1-year increments. So after the 3 years, it starts to get a little cumbersome and burdensome because you have to keep filing these big, massive petitions every year. It's not great, but the initial 3 years is, I think, and again, they go to outside legal counsel. Takes some time to prepare and file these. I would give them at least 4 or 5 months if you know you're going to work on an O1. Because it's so much evidence that you need to submit. So we're aspirational. We really want to get an e-form for O1. As of right now, it's still a PDF document that you fill out and you send to me directly, and I'll get the case assigned with a law firm. You can also send it to Chiwe. Chiwe takes these too. She works on these O1 cases with outside counsel. Really going to push for an e-form for this one, though. I think it would be very helpful to get these cases started. We ask for the person's resume. Obviously, that's super important for O1 for these initial reviews. So if you could send us the resume, you can send us the initial review form. We can get the case opened. You'll see this bottom box. It's very expensive. It's about $10,000 to prepare and file an O1. It's not something we recommend if there are other options available, honestly. It's expensive, it's super labor intensive, and it takes a long time. And honestly, I think they have a high chance of requests for evidence at USCIS, who adjudicates these petitions, because there's so many different places that could raise a red flag or that they can question. There's just so much evidence submitted that it can often lead to requests for evidence. They can be premium processed, which is great, which means you can speed up adjudication to like 2 weeks, but it's just a lot of work on the front end trying to get the thing prepared and submit all of the evidence that's required to show this person is extraordinary. How much time do we have here? Not much. That's okay. Yeah, I'm glad that we had this conversation. I'm glad that we got to discuss, honestly, rather than getting through all the slides, which probably won't happen. But let's talk about green cards really quickly. Employer-sponsored permanent residency. Permanent resident is a green card holder. There are 2 options, really. Most of them go to outside counsel. Some of them, if you have a faculty member or even a staff member who has a teaching component to their job, our office may be able to process these if you open the case immediately with us when the person is hired, sometimes even before the person is hired. They'll open a permanent residency case with us. I won't go into all the details, but basically there are timelines that we need to meet in order for ISSS to process these. And because of Department of Labor processing timelines, we often don't meet them unless the case is open like as soon as the person is hired. It's kind of ridiculous. And that's mostly, well, that's pretty much all down to Department of Labor processing timelines. These are called special handling for teaching faculty. It says faculty, but it's actually just any job with a teaching component we can process at ISSS, which is a lot cheaper, obviously, and a lot less burdensome. here's the timeline. You must file a labor certification, which is one step in this process, within 18 months of the job being offered. And it's currently taking at least 10 months. There may be more as of today. I made these slides like a couple months ago and they just keep going up. 10 months because of DOL processing. So it's kind of absurd, to be honest, how long it's taking the Department of Labor to get back to us. And just so you know, we prepare a little form and we submit it to the Department of Labor asking how much the person needs to be paid. And then like 10, 11 months later, they say, you have to pay them this much. I mean, it's crazy. It shouldn't take that long, in my humble opinion. Less evidence and processing work than outside counsel options. I stick by that. I think if you're eligible for special handling, you have a teaching component to your job, then it's a great option for permanent residency. It's just a lot less burdensome. Policy 119, you may have heard of this. Most of the people that we sponsor for a green card are faculty. If you're thinking, the department is thinking of sponsoring someone who's in a staff position for a green card, there is a policy at Penn that says we won't sponsor essentially staff positions unless you submit a written request explaining why you need this person for this role. I think this is based on the idea that if there's someone from the local community that can be hired for a staff position, then we should hire that person as opposed to hiring all foreign nationals for staff positions. Which isn't like a bad policy. It's not a bad policy at all. It makes a lot of sense, right? We're part of the Philadelphia community and I think we should be thinking like that if possible. But we can get exceptions to this rule if you can tell us why the staff, not tell us, if you could tell HR and convince HR why the staff member is so exceptional that you need to sponsor them for a permanent residency, a permanent position. You want to keep them permanently. Remember, an H-1B or a J-1 are very, very much temporary. So we need to show kind of what makes this person unique, why we couldn't replace them if we wanted to. I mean, we got to hire them for maybe 6 years on an H-1B or 10 years on a TN or an E3. Why do we need to keep them permanently? So if you have the request for this, reach out to me. I will reach out to talent acquisition in HR and a contact. You may know Erica from Global Support Services, who will review the request and let us know if an exception has been granted. And if an exception is granted, then we'll move forward with permanent residency for a staff position, which likely would be reaching out to the outside counsel. So I'll just repeat, basically, if you're thinking of sponsoring a staff member in a staff position for a green card, we need to get an exception first. So please reach out. Please include a letter explaining why this person is so special that we need to sponsor them for permanent residency. Our outside counsel is Goldblum, Pollins, and Dennis now. I guess Kristen Dennis has become a partner, which is great for Kristen. She's an excellent colleague and really, really smart attorney. So if you've ever worked with her, I'm sure you know what I mean. There are so many different categories for permanent residency and so many different options that it's good to speak with one of these offices, Clasco or Goldblum, and see what the best option is. I can give my opinion, but I will defer to them because they're the experts. They're the real experts. They do these cases every day. They're just great law firms to work with. And, if we need to, we can always have a call with them to discuss. Often it will be me and the employee or Chiwe and the employee who will have a call or email back and forth, and then we'll report back to you as the department contacts and say, like, we think this is the best option. Can you confirm that the department is willing to move forward with this option? It's the best option because of these reasons. Can we move forward? But anyway, we work with both of these law firms very closely and a lot. So these are, again, you can pick whichever one you'd like, but I can't recommend one over the other. And you can email me the CV and job opportunity of this candidate before for initial review. And then again, I'll confirm what I think with these law firms before we move forward. we created a permanent residency e-form. So I'm very excited about this. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm really excited. I think other people are too. Chiwe seems excited. I can see the
Yeah,
excitement.
I agree.
too. I think it's better. Hopefully it's easier process for you guys, honestly, than a paper e-form. I have nightmares about these getting lost or me missing one just because I get so many emails. But now we have an e-form. So we have a record. You submit the e-form through iPen, just like everything else. The person needs to have a record. So keep that in mind. If they don't, reach out to me and we can talk about what you need to do. But as long as the person has an iPen record, you can start the PR process through iPen, submit the e-form, and then we'll, either me or Chiwe or Donna from my office will reach out and talk about next steps, basically, after we do a review. Yeah, I think that's all we have here. That last box is kind of important. I know for you guys, when you're talking to the big wigs in your department, they're going to ask how much is this going to cost. It really depends on the case type. If we're not telling you after we do a review and kind of make some suggestions, we should be including those fees with those suggestions. So if we don't, ask us and we'll definitely get back to you on those. That's all we have for today. I kind of rushed through the last part, but like I said, I'm glad that we had the opportunity to discuss. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I think that, like I said, the majority of cases are J1s and H1Bs, but we see a lot of these types of cases as well. And it's important to think about all of the options because hopefully you've taken away from this that there are a lot of benefits to other types of status. We're gonna be, Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, but we'll post this or either, I think we'll post a recording of this on our website. If you want to come back to it as a resource, I hope it was helpful and I hope it can be helpful in the future. Thank you for your questions. I think they were really great questions and I think they're extremely helpful for us in determining what we should include in workshops moving forward. Are there any other questions in here? Great session, very informative. That's good. Yeah, I think that's it. So hope you guys have a great rest of your rainy Wednesday, but looks like it's going to be clearing up at the end of the week and hopefully we see you all again soon. I'm sure I'll see you on email and probably on advising as well for some of you. So thanks again and take care.
Thanks everyone. Take care.
All right. Thank you, everyone. See you soon.